Starting off this countdown, we have Blue Ash, Ohio. According to an urban legend, there's a portal to hell in Blue Ash, Ohio. It's been given the name Satan's Hollow, and it's the place where a group of Satanists like to meet and conduct rituals there. Satan's Hollow is located in the woods near a storm drain. A number of residents have reported hearing screams from that tunnel at night. Maybe it's from the people being sacrificed there for Satan himself. So yeah, this group allegedly opened a portal to hell and go there whenever they can to make contact with Satan and perform satanic rituals for him. In our 9th spot, we have the Gates of Hell crater. Located in the Karakum Desert in Turkmenistan, there is this 230-foot wide hole that has been on fire for over 50 years. In fact, its glow can be seen from miles away. So the crater was actually created in 1971 when the Soviets were drilling in the area, but their drilling rig accidentally hit a massive underground natural gas cavern. This caused the ground to collapse, forming a huge crater and sinkhole. Now, here's the mystery. They don't know how the crater ignited in the first place, but it's been burning for nearly 50 years, even after people have tried to put the fire out. So it's thought that this area leads directly to hell. I mean, it's a fiery sinkhole. What if it just sucks you down and then brings you right to hell? Moving on, at number 8, we have Helm. And I mean, the name itself literally has hell in it. Coincidence? I think not. Anyways, Helm is a small town near York, Pennsylvania, and legend goes that this location is home to one of the real 7 gates of hell. So according to the folklore, there is an abandoned insane asylum located on the outskirts of this town. In the 19th century, there was a fire at the asylum which killed some inmates, and let the most dangerous inmates escape. Some were caught and then tortured or even killed. Others were trapped inside a series of gates, which they still haunt to this day. One of these gates is said to lead to hell. Over the years, this story has changed, but it's still believed that one of the gates is there in that town. In our 7th spot, we have Stull, Kansas. The small town of Stull in Kansas is another place said to have a gate to hell. First off, the town is rumored to be cursed. Apparently, it's been haunted by a number of demonic forces since the 1970s. Rumor has it that this is because the gate to hell is somewhere in that area. They think it's either in Stull Cemetery or by the United Methodist Church. Stull Cemetery, though, is said to be where people would go to practice occult rituals and contact Satan. In 1974, a newspaper wrote an article claiming that the devil was spotted twice in Stull that year. Once on Halloween and once on the spring equinox. That's why people started to believe that someone located and opened a gate to hell in the area, and now Satan has a way to get into our world. In fact, the town has to have 24-hour security because people like to jump the fence of that cemetery and explore the property looking for this gate or portal. In our 6th spot, we have the opening of the gate ritual. So apparently there's a ritual that you can perform in order to open a gate to hell. You know, in case it's ever been on your bucket list. According to occultist Astenu Sever, he performed this ritual in the past with some other occultists. He performed it on some historical grounds in the Balkans. He won't tell us the exact location though. And also, he said that they all took an oath so that they can't share what happened on that day. But he alludes to the fact that the ritual did work, and he even wrote a full article on how you can open a portal to hell yourself. Do I recommend you listen to him and try it? No, definitely not. He even shared a huge warning outlining all the risks of doing so. So let's just say it won't be pretty. But now there's a gate to hell somewhere out in Europe, and we don't really know where. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the family home portal. In 2008, Steph Harper, her husband Colin, and their 3 kids moved into a new home in North Wales. But as they started to settle in, they noticed something was off about their home. Shortly after moving in, they heard these weird banging noises and saw shadowy apparitions and stuff. You know, the typical paranormal stuff. But the biggest thing that her and her family noticed was that their house would smell of rotten flesh. Don't know how she knows what rotten flesh smells like, but that's besides the point. Smelling something rotten can be an indicator that your home is being haunted. After investigating, Steph believes that there is a portal to the spirit world in her lounge area in her house. She believes it was created before her house was built in the 1950s or 60s. But that's why her house has such a strong connection to the paranormal paranormal. Moving on to number 4, we have the Emerald Hill Hell House, otherwise known as the Demon House. This Pennsylvania house gets its name because of how haunted it is. Now, not much is known about it. It belongs to the McHugh family estate. The new owners of the house learned that the land that the mansion was built on was once a burial ground. So I mean, that right there is a bad sign. But wait, it gets worse. Sometime in the late 1860s, a woman named Carla arrived at the house. The house was given to her by her uncle who lived in Scotland. Sometime while living there, she decided to excavate some of the property. But while doing so, she found well over 70 unmarked graves. It's said that when she unearthed these graves, she unleashed the evil on the land and opened a portal to hell. That's why the area is a hotbed for paranormal activity. Moving on to number 3, we have the portal opening incident. So apparently there's something called a portal opening ritual game, where you can use a mirror to open a door to the spirit world. I don't know about you, but that does not sound like a game at all. Anyways, a guy named AJ decided, hey, let's try this out. Why not? What on earth could possibly go wrong? So he was visiting his grandma's farmhouse and was like, this is the perfect location. So he grabbed the supplies he needed, including a full-length mirror. He followed the ritual, but he was goofing around with it all and he didn't think it would actually work. Well, while goofing off, he accidentally broke the mirror. He never got to properly close the portal, and now that the mirror is broken, he can't close it at all. Ever since then, the spirits followed him home and his place is haunted. So what did we learn today, folks? Don't play this portal game, don't fool around with spiritual games, and lastly, don't buy cheap mirrors. In our second spot, we have the ocean on fire. Earlier this year, a fire started in an underwater pipeline in the middle of the ocean. The ocean was then literally on fire, which seems hella impossible, but it happened anyways. So the fire was caused by a gas leak from an underwater pipeline in the Gulf of Mexico. People began sharing images of the ocean on fire and were like, oh my god, it's a portal to hell. Not gonna lie, it really does look like one. I don't know about you, but I didn't have portal to hell on my 2021 bingo card. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Crescent Hotel. The Crescent Hotel is referred to as the most haunted hotel in America. According to the legend, in 1937, Norman G. Baker, a millionaire inventor, turned a hotel into a hospital and posed as a doctor. He claimed that he had a cure for cancer. As a result, he began to treat patients despite having no proper training. This dude made up a weird mixture of alcohol, glycerin, carbolic acid, and he mixed it with tea from watermelon seeds and brown corn silk and clover leaves, and then he would give it to his patients, saying that this was the cure. As a result, many of the people he treated ended up dying. Over the years, many guests at this hotel have reported seeing ghosts and would experience paranormal activity. Then in 1997, the hotel's new owners decided to bring in a medium. The medium discovered that there is actually a portal to the spiritual world inside this hotel. Apparently it's located on top of what used to be the morgue. The medium said that, and I quote, "The dimension holds spirits of the dead." So, it sounds like hell to me.
Starting off this list at number 10, we have the author of the novel A Day in Hell. In this book, Matthew Botsford explains that after he accidentally walked into the middle of a shootout, he got shot in the head and died. He was resuscitated, but he was in a coma for 27 days afterwards. He explains a short time in hell as utter darkness that enveloped him as he was in thick black ink that poured over his eyes. He claimed that he was suspended in darkness, being blasted with hot air and having demonic eyes make their way towards him until some sort of divine entity grabbed him, telling him it wasn't his time.
Coming in number 9 is Army Dr. George Ritchie. He explains that in the 9 minutes he was dead, he was given a tour of hell by Jesus himself. I mean, what is Jesus doing in hell? Or maybe this isn't Jesus, maybe this is Jesus. Maybe this is Jesus in hell. Well, all around him he claims spirits were fighting each other to the death, kicking, biting, scratching, abuse, every single horrible act that could be imagined was taking place around him. And next up at number 8 is one aunt who died for a short time on the operating table. Well, she described the situation saying that she was lifted through the ceiling and into the sky. She ended up floating a few inches above a dirty brown lifeless field, and across a dark void she could see a lush green meadow. She suddenly felt something grabbing at her as if it was ripping flesh from her her leg. She started withering to get out of the creature's grasp and saw her body on the operating table flailing around just before she was resurrected.
In at number 7, we have a professor who visited hell while he was unconscious prior to an emergency surgery. He says that during this time, he was being attacked by all sorts of vicious creatures, and when he tried to pray to protect himself, they only got angrier. He said that they screamed at him and that there was no God. He says that they spoke in the most obscene language, the worst blasphemy he has ever heard in his life. Coming in at the number 6 slot today, we got a hospice patient who came close to death. One of his workers said that his patient had a near-death experience one day and was terrified by what he saw. He says he saw what he thought was pain and fire, leading him to what he thinks was hell. Apparently, this man had no closure in his life and wasn't in touch with his family, so maybe this was a little bit of a wake-up call for him.
Halfway through, at number 5 is a Reddit user who has a very interesting interpretation of Satan.
This user claimed that he had OD'd 20 years ago. He died and saw Satan.
But what he saw wasn't what we normally envision, the devil as being, but rather he was a giant fire ant walking on lava.
Even he was confused why Satan would present himself as a fire ant, but I guess demons are gonna do what demons are gonna do.
Okay, if I'm the devil and I'm coming back as an animal, I am not coming back as one of the smallest animals ever.
I don't know, an ant that's on fire and it like crawls up your leg and gets in your shorts and stuff, maybe it goes in your urethra? That's bad.
Whoa, you took it to the next level.
I mean, that's hell. We're in hell, dude.
I'd come back as a dinosaur.
Yeah, dinosaur would be
just a massive dinosaur, not the ones that eats only plants.
No. You want a what? The carnivorous?
A meat eater.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you want.
I can't remember grade 3 science. Is that what it is? Carnivorous? The meat eater.
You have carnivores, herbivores, and omnivores. Boom.
Taking number 4 slot, we have somebody who explains hell as just like Earth, but dead. What does this mean? She says that after being hit by a car, she woke up in the same place where she was hit, except the sky was reddish orange, there was no animals, and the plants were dying or they were already dead. Is this real life right now? And the world smelled like rotten meat. Okay, so technically this one was a story on the non-sleep subreddit, but in my opinion, I feel like it seems like a pretty realistic version of what hell could be.
In at number 3 is a man who was momentarily killed in a bar fight. After being stabbed with a broken bottle, this man said that entering hell felt like passing through the open mouth of a volcano or burning lake. People who he knew had died were warning him not to come there, as there was no escape. All he could do was hear their crying and wailing of the souls that were trapped down there. After he came back to life, he decided to become a pastor to save the souls from going where he was headed.
Next up, number 2 is somebody who managed to crawl away from hell. I mean, I didn't know you can go to hell and come back. I thought it was a one-way ticket. Well, after suffering heart failure, he felt himself falling through Earth and landing just before a tall set of rusty gates, which had an aurora of being the gates of hell. Being too afraid to enter and knowing it wasn't his time, well, he managed to crawl back towards sunlight and back to life. Absolutely insane. I'm not sure if I believe it, but if it's a true story, remarkable.
And we're finishing off today's list with a Reddit user who drowned at 14.
This person claims that at the time they didn't entirely realize that they were dead.
They just felt like they were floating on the water. They said they saw somebody standing on the water who answered no when the user asked if they were God.
They told the user to keep floating, so they did. Eventually though, the cool water began heating up until it was boiling. They were paralyzed and forced to be in excruciating pain for what felt like years until the water cooled down again, only to start the process all over again.
Eventually, the creature who the user spoke to earlier stopped and says, "Looks like someone's come for you. Our playtime is over."
But maybe we will see each other again sometime. The user was then brought back to life by paramedics, the real life heroes.
Gorgia at number 10. 28-year-old Linda died during a brief illness and went to hell where she saw her parents burning in fire. Great. They weren't the only familiar faces she saw either. She also saw Colonel Gaddafi and Whitney Houston. She said that she was allowed to leave hell for a second chance at life, but was told that Muslims and Catholics would end up here if they didn't convert to Christianity, which doesn't really make any sense. Linda's story made her a celebrity in Sierra Leone, where two people stabbed one another over whether or not they thought her near-death experience was true. Sure. Coming into number 9, we have a World War II soldier's his version of hell. In 1943, George Ritchie woke from his hospital bed where he had medically died of pneumonia. This is when Jesus showed up and gave him a guided tour of the afterlife. He showed him that hell was, surprisingly, a bar. Lost souls grasped at drinks being swilled back by the living, but they couldn't have them. He then saw other corners of hell as perpetual brawls and aggressive, brutal sex. Blimey. Apparently he was awoken by a Holy Spirit who told him that he had 45 years to publish his testimony. It's a generous deadline if ever I heard of one. Coming into number 8, we have Robert Light. Robert Light uploaded a video to YouTube claiming that God had showed him heaven and hell in a dream. Watched 33,000 times, he describes the horrors of hell to the internet. He said, "What I saw was a dark place, a place of weeping, a place of gnashing of teeth, a place of regret, a place of pain, and a pleasant mourning." He said there were a group of people who were there crying in anguish saying, "Oh, why didn't anyone warn us that living life after our own desires would end up here?" I'm not really sure what kind of feedback he was getting because he disabled the comments for the video. I'm thinking people didn't really like it. Coming into number 7, we have Redditor Zashiba. This contributor to Redditor says that her aunt relayed a horrifying near-death experience to her. She medically died during an operation and floated above the operating table. Absolute classic near-death experience stuff right there. However, instead of floating towards the bright light, she floated above what Zashiba called a very large chasm. Now this chasm was in the middle of a very bland field of dirt. The hole was deep and dark and she couldn't see to the bottom. Her aunt then relayed seeing a beautiful field of green grass but out of her reach. She then began being pulled down into the chasm. Now her niece says that a pair of hands reached out in the blackness and started pulling at her, ripping her flesh from her legs and her feet. Her aunt then said that she saw herself in hospital again and she was revived. Ugh. Coming into number 6, we have the account of Angie Fenimore. Angie has been very forthcoming with her story, sharing it with a number of national news outlets and using the experience to make real changes in her life. Angie attempted suicide in 1991 when she was 27 years old. She says that as she was slipping away, she was subjected to a life review. Again, absolutely classic near-death stuff. After her life review, she was surrounded by a cold darkness that seemed to go on forever. She was then in some kind of dark open field surrounded by roaming lost souls. These were too sad to communicate with one another. Luckily, she came through it and in the end she wrote a book on her experience. She later became a life coach. I guess it goes to show, guys, you can be really low, but you can turn your life around. Hell is a burning cauldron according to Dr. Rajiv Party at number 5. Even doctors can go to hell, it seems. Dr. Party was the chief anesthetist at Bakersfield Heart Hospital in California. Unfortunately, he himself needed life-saving surgery from septic shock. During his surgery, he said he floated out of his body and felt a jolt of pure fear. He said that he heard screams of pain and anguish as he looked into a flaming canyon filled with burning flesh. He said a voice spoke to him, telling him he had lived a materialistic and selfish life and that he had lost all empathy. He was then given a second chance by angels who told him that he was destined to be a healer. He was then given his second chance and he turned everything around. I don't like this. Matthew Botsford describes flesh-eating demons at number 4. Great! Matthew was attending a business convention in Atlanta in 2013 when he was shot with an Uzi submachine gun. Matthew was involved in a random attack as an angry man sprayed shots onto the pavement. He described the pain of the bullet as like a needle in the head. However, that is nothing compared with what was to come next. Matthew said, "Immediately I shifted from the temporal realm I lived in to the eternal realm of hell." Aged just 28 at the time, Matthew spent 27 days in an induced coma. During this time, he was shackled over a glowing red abyss. He said there were four-legged creatures roaming in agony and screams of lost souls pierced the air. The red abyss rose to become visible magma, which burned his limbs off one by one, although they kept on growing back and then being burned off again. Ugh. He also said demons with sharp teeth ripped into his flesh. Luckily, what he describes as the hand of God brought him back. From that day, he has a renewed belief in God. Now sadly, Matthew's friend and business associate wasn't so lucky. He died on the spot right there on the pavement. Let's hope he didn't go to hell. From flesh eating to flesh tearing. Great! We are talking about Howard Storm's experience at number 3. In 1985, Howard was professor of art at Northern Kentucky University. Like a lot of people, he used anger as a coping mechanism and never really thought about trying to better himself. On the evening of June 1st, Howard very nearly died aged 38 as a result of a perforation of the stomach. He slipped into unconsciousness and saw figures beckoning him into a haze. He followed them and they pretended to be kind to him. They then urged him to stay with them. Now eventually the figures got very aggressive, verbally and physically. The shadowy figures taunted him and eventually began to claw and bite him. The whole situation culminated in him being eaten alive. Luckily, Howard awoke and felt a renewed love of Jesus. Coming into number 2, we have Vasula Ryden. Vasula believes that both God and the devil speak to her and use her as some kind of vessel. Good. Now it first happened in 1985, which seems to be an important year for big hell reveals. She said that she was writing a grocery list when an angel came and embodied her. This angel then showed her visions of both heaven and hell. Now she says that sometimes the devil possesses her and uses her hand to write. She also claimed that the devil showed her visions of the destruction of the World Trade Centers in 2001 and it looked a lot like hell. Are there any more celebrities in hell? You betcha! Our number 1 saw a few shocking hell residents that you might recognize. That's right, coming into number 1 we have Angelica Elizabeth Zambrano Mora. Yes, that is her full name, but let's just go with Angelica for short. Angelica was 18 when she died for 23 hours. She said that Jesus showed her hell where she saw people on fire begging for mercy. Who else did she run into? Firstly, Michael Jackson. Why was he there? Well, apparently he replicated demons in his dance moves. Jesus alleged that he had actually made a deal with the devil for fame and fortune. Who else was there? Well, none other than Pope John Paul II. Why? Jesus said that he liked money more than the truth, which, I mean, maybe that is the truth. It seems that Angelica thinks that Jesus took her there to tell the world that hell is real, but who knows? So guys, that was the